So I'm Matt Giampaolo. I'm executive publisher at Elsevier, and I'm going to be speaking about attitudes and behaviors as they come through and through this survey. So the first question I'm going to highlight is: am I being paid fairly for the work that I do? Actually, I wanted to get sort of a show of hands, if you're comfortable. How many people in the audience feel like they're not being paid fairly for the work that they do? Okay. Is it like a quarter to a third? And yeah, people might not be comfortable. This is just like not.
It's okay. You
Yeah.
don't need to raise your hand.
This is just it's for fun. So actually, can I see your screen? It's hard for me to read. So one of the takeaways here is that 37% of women answered this question in a way that would indicate that they feel they're being paid unfairly, whereas only 25% of men reported the same. So there's definitely a gap there in those perceptions. And this comes through a few times in these slides. People who identify as gender non-binary, they in this case 62.5% of them felt that they weren't being paid fairly. So there's clearly people are self-perceiving that there's a difference there, so this is filtered through those lenses. Now I'm being paid. Sorry, I have a fair opportunity to be promoted. It gets even bigger, that 45% of women feel that they're answering in a way that says they don't feel that they have fair opportunities to be promoted. And again, 50% of people who identify as gender non-binary, whereas it's only 36% of men. Obviously, there's going to be some levels of people feeling like they've been treated unfairly, but we're seeing a gap in those perceptions for women and people who identify as gender non-binary. I guess I'm sorry, I'm soft-spoken. Thanks for letting me know that you need me to get closer. Okay. So while women are, what slide are we on?
It's that one.
Yeah. Okay. On the other hand, women are saying that they're saying that they feel that they need to have all of the job requirements or most of the job requirements before they apply for a position. This is different than what men are reporting. Thanks. Men are reporting only 40% feel that they need to have all or most of the job requirements. Again, people who are gender non-binary are having an even higher level of reporting that they have to have all the requirements. But the next question shows that women feel strongly that they are pursuing activities, that they're not waiting for opportunities to come to them. So there's a disconnect there. Women are reporting that they are going after positions, but then there must be something going on where there's a feeling that women feel they need to be able to check all of the boxes before they can apply for something. So I think that's important. A few more gender differences. 75% of men and 68% of women say that they always or often contribute to discussions. Only 38% of those who identify as gender non-binary say the same. And then I try to participate through, though often I find it hard to break into discussion. Very high percentage of gender non-binary people are reporting that they find it hard to break into the conversation, and 51% of women, and again, men are reporting at a lower rate that they have difficulty breaking into the discussion. Okay, so there's a. Oh. It's confusing. Sorry. So there's a few comments here that you can read through. So one of the perceptions we see is that at the top, at the top of a company, there's more men, and at the entry levels, there's more women. That sort of is going to come out in our data, and then there are other studies that will show similar. I'm going to talk about the UK gender pay gap study briefly in a moment. All right, so just a couple slides going over ethnicity and perceptions of ethnicity. Do you want to drive for me? Thanks. Again, am I being paid fairly for the work that I do? The big one that comes out here is people who identify as black or mixed multiple ethnicity are reporting at much higher rates that they are not being paid fairly for the work that they do. It's a lower number for people that identify as Asian, but as you'll see when Simone speaks, people who are Asian actually make up the bulk of them are reporting that they're in the lowest pay band, but that again might be those regional differences that most people who are reporting that they're Asian are actually in India or another Asian country, Philippines, something like that. Okay, next slide.
What's the next slide?
I believe that people of all ethnicities.
One back.
One more.
One back. Yeah.
Forward.
Right there.
No,
No, it's not.
Forward.
There it is. There it is.
I think I was speaking about a slide you didn't have. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I'm not
So-
a driver either.
There's some gendered joke in there, but
Don't go there.
yeah. So I believe that people of all ethnicities have the same opportunities to be promoted in the industry. Again, there's a huge difference here. 67% of people who are black and 55% of people who identify as mixed or multiple ethnicities do not feel that people of all ethnicities have the same opportunities. Again, only 30% of Asians perceive a disparity, even though they may make up the lowest pay band. Okay, so here's a few quotes on ethnicity. I'm actually going to read a couple of them. My workplace sorry. I think the biggest issue is not the entry point, but that there's the pipeline problem. People aren't coming in at the entry level positions. I don't think, this person says, I don't think that the industry or my company is, there's a specific obvious gender diversity bias, but there are implicit barriers or an unconscious bias. And then at the bottom there, we have somebody who says, who their reaction to these questions is, I think we need to be very careful about moving away from meritocracy simply to meet whatever prevailing view of diversity is at any given moment, and give me a talented team first, please. So this person's sort of reacting against these questions, saying, well, it needs to be, we need to just focus on talent. So now I'm going to take a step back, and this data is not from the Work Equity Project, but I think it relates. Just looking at back to gender now, at the gender pay gap that has been reported, it's mandatory for companies, according to these in the UK, to give this reporting. And I just took 11 companies in scholarly publishing. I took the information from the reports and averaged them. So the gender makeup, according to these studies, is 67.3% women and 32.7% men. But there's a median pay gap in the scholarly industry of 19.8%. So women are 19.8% behind in their pay. And the reason for that appears to be because of the number of women who are in the lowest quartile of pay versus in the highest quartile of pay. So it's whether people are being promoted from the lower entry levels up through the ranks to the highest levels. So if you look at the lowest quartile, 67% of employees are women, and then when you get to the highest quartile, it almost flips. In some companies, it very strikingly flips exactly, but there's a higher proportion of men who are at the senior levels. So women outnumber men within our industry, but they're not being promoted to the highest levels. So comparing these attitudes to the gender pay gap landscape, I think gives us a couple of interesting take-homes. It appears that the people who are least represented in the power structure, so people who report as gender non-binary, people report their ethnicity as black or mixed race, they're reporting a perception of unequal opportunity and unequal treatment. People at the highest levels are least likely to perceive the biases that are creating these unequal opportunities, because they're reporting that they're reporting at higher rates that people have equal opportunity. And then this is where I take that quote. People state that they want the people who have the most talent on their teams, but if you combine that with unconscious bias, people are always more likely to hire someone who thinks like them, talks like them, looks like them, grew up in the same town or went to the same college as them. So that can sort of really feed forward over time and make it so that the senior levels always look the same over time. And if that's happening, we have evidence that you're going to unequal outcomes, and that means that in the end, the most talented people definitely aren't at the top. I mean, some of the people at the top are the most talented, but there's clearly going to be a high proportion of talented people that are not getting to the senior levels. All right.